everyone, it's Miss Leah again, and we are back with L Jam Storytime. Today's book is called The Enchanted Symphony, written by Julie Andrews and Emma Walton Hamilton, and illustrated by Elly Mackay. Here we go. Okay. Piccolino lived in a small village, famous for its charms. Its people were happy and creative. Singing and dancing felt as natural to them as breathing. They cherished their families, their friendships, and the abundant green countryside around them. And they delighted in their exquisite opera house, where Piccolino's father was the maestro of the orchestra. Visitors came from miles around to enjoy the village's delights. To keep the sightseers happy, the townspeople built more shops to sell trinkets, gadgets, and souvenirs. They baked sumptuous cookies and cakes and planted bigger and more colorful window boxes. But the busier and more prosperous they became, the more they lost touch with their own simple pleasures. One day, Piccolino noticed a faint purple mist creeping into the village. At first, everyone was too busy to be concerned, but soon it thickened and spread from home to home, garden to garden. It crept into cottages and shops, seeping through windows and under doors, until eventually the entire village was blanketed in fog. Trees and flowers began to wilt. Birds no longer sang, and the sun, moon, and stars disappeared from view. People grew listless and dispirited. They stopped visiting with one another or even going outside. The town fell silent. The opera house sat empty, but for Piccolino and his father, who summoned the energy each week to clean the pretty auditorium, lest the fog damage the velvet seats and curtains. They dusted the gold trimmed balconies and crystal chandeliers, and they watered the drooping palms in the lobby, though it didn't seem to help. One day, as the maestro was sweeping the stage, Piccolino wandered over to the grand piano. Gently raising the lid, he played a simple melody that echoed in the empty space. The sound was startling and sweet, and the maestro paused to listen. For a moment, his spirits lifted, and he realized how much he had missed music. But without an audience, the orchestra had no reason to play. As the boy and his father prepared to close up for the day, Piccolino noticed something surprising. The palms in the lobby seemed to be standing taller. On a hunch, he ran back to the piano and played his little tune again. Sure enough, the palms looked fresher still. Piccolino called his father to come see what had happened. The maestro scratched his chin for a moment. Then, at Piccolino's urging, he agreed to try an experiment. Returning home, they loaded their ailing houseplants onto a wagon and wheeled them to the opera house. Once again, when Piccolino played the piano, the plants seemed to brighten. This called for an even bigger experiment. With growing excitement, father and son pushed through the fog, knocking on doors and begging friends and neighbors to donate their sickly plants to an important cause. In time, the opera house was so filled with foliage that it began to look more like a garden than a theater. Now the maestro joined his son at the piano. Together they played a lively air, but with so many poorly plants, one piano duet didn't seem enough to help them all. Piccolino and his father suddenly knew what to do. They placed chairs and music stands on the stage. They laid out pages of sheet music and lit the chandeliers. Then they braved the fog one last time to visit every member of the orchestra. They implored the musicians to rise above their melancholy and summon the strength to come immediately to the opera house. There was an audience that needed their music. One by one, the bewildered musicians made their way to the stage. They slowly took their seats and began to tune their instruments. The maestro raised his baton, and there was a momentary hush. Piccolino pulled on a heavy rope that stretched to the ceiling. The great velvet curtain swung open. Plants of all shapes and sizes filled the hall to capacity, all the way to the uppermost tier. Every seat, every box, every balcony spilled over with greenery. The astonished musicians began to play tentatively at first, but gradually building in strength and tempo as the joy of making music again lifted their spirits. And the plants responded in kind, nodding and swaying, their stems standing taller and firmer, their leaves rustling in appreciation. And then the fog itself began to lift. Piccolino ran to the opera house doors and flung them wide. Music poured into the streets, and rainbows of color returned to the cottages and gardens. Birds chirped sleepily. They began to sing. Curious villagers opened their doors and windows, then ventured outside, calling to friends and neighbors. Before long, a throng of people were wending their way through the village, enchanted by the glorious sounds emanating from the opera house. But there wasn't a seat to be had, so they stood shoulder to shoulder, crowding the square, their hearts so full of joy that they couldn't help but nod and sway, then dance and sing. Eventually, the mysterious fog vanished altogether, leaving the village bathed in radiant light. And the boy, the maestro, and the townspeople understood that if they remained faithful to all that matters most, nothing could darken their days again. The end. And this book is called The Enchanted Symphony, written by Julie Andrews and Emma Walton Hamilton, and illustrated by Elly Mackay. I really hope you enjoyed this book as much as I did, and I will see you next time at LJAM Storytime. Bye!